I believe it was October. I was at Liberty University. We were outside. The ministry I was leading, Bridging the Gap, we have like an intake process. The proceedings are going well. My phone starts ringing. I'm like, okay. I see it's my pops. I'm like, all right, this is a little early for him to be calling me, but all right, cool. Pick up the phone and my mom and my dad, they're great actors sometimes, but I can feel the heaviness on his voice. I'm like, hey, Pops, what's going on? And he's like, we just had to close everything down. My name is Lacroy Nixon. On stage, I go by Atlas. I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was raised by my mom and my pops, Larry and Keenan Nixon. They were both, heavy working in the church. And then they got, the call from God that it's time to move. So God led them out here to Virginia, specifically Williamsburg. And it was a big deal because we didn't have any family out here, no connections. We didn't have anything out here. But God said to move, so they moved. I was about 5 years old at the time. I have two younger brothers, the first of which was just born. He was born in July. We were on the road in August. So it was a crazy move, but they moved up here and God called them to start a church. So my childhood really centered around serving in the church, being in the youth group, whatever it was. I learned to work a soundboard, working in the sound booth. My mom had taken me to do drum lessons when I was like in 3rd grade. So for about a year, learned how to play drums. Didn't realize how much of a skill it would be until later on in my life. My dad, I'd always grown up seeing him preach. And he was always like a very energetic preacher, very like fiery, in like the way he delivered his message. And my mom, it was different because as a black woman in Williamsburg, Virginia, most first ladies, they kind of sit on the front row, they're quiet, they're not always as active. My mom was incredibly active. About 4'10", will shout you down, speak in tongues, lay you out. That's my mom. She was just as active a preacher as my dad was. So growing up seeing them two, it really influenced just me as a person, even as a young kid. My early childhood years really influenced my adulthood because honestly, a lot of artists, they have like a backstory of like trauma or something that they had to deal with. Me, I didn't have to deal with that. There's a lot of things I didn't worry about as a child. We weren't rich, we didn't have a bunch of everything, but I never had to worry about hearing gunshots coming home. I never had to really worry about being around dangerous people or being in dangerous environments. Like I said, most of my childhood was in the church, and as I grew, I developed really a hunger to get closer to Jesus and really not just serving my church, but serving my community. So being around my mom and my pops, being around my friends and really my church family, it really influenced how I see the world and how I began to see the world even into my adulthood. Also, as a kid, I was real athletic. I was always trying to get into stuff. So when I first got out for football, it was for the James City Jaguars. First year, the rec team jumped out. I was gonna start, I was gonna do all kinds of stuff until I fractured my right ankle. It was no good. I was out for the season. I was so mad. And the team did not do good that year. Tragic. But it was something I learned about patience. As a kid, I realized how impatient I could be sometimes. But I learned a lot about, sometimes it's just not for you. Sometimes it's just not the time. 7th grade, even in middle school, it was different because in elementary school, everybody loves you. You're a kid. Everybody loves everybody. It's cool. We're all just kids. Middle school, everybody knows that everything is different. By the time I got into middle school, specifically 7th grade, I was struggling with a lot. Like I said, my mom and dad were pastors, so they were a lot of times busy. They had a lot of things that they were called to do. And there was a lot of things as a pastor's kid that you don't really get to say. There's a lot of things you want to speak out, and you don't really get the space to say it because you're the pastor's kid. You're not supposed to have issues. You're not supposed to have problems. What do you know about struggle? You don't know what it's like to go hungry, but your soul is imploding, and you don't even know how to put words to that because you're a kid. Considering that my grades had began to fall and things were kind of crumbling at the time, and I didn't really know how to address it. My grades had actually gotten so bad that my dad, come 8th grade year, he had pulled me out of football. He said, nah, we're not playing nothing. You're going to focus on your grades. We're going into high school. You got stuff to do. Oh, I was mad. I was like, come on. I was supposed to start this year. I was supposed to be good. Nah, again, patience. Sometimes it's just not the time. Coming into high school, again, being with my church, we had always gone on missions trips. We were always a very missional church. I went on my first missions trip to Peru in my 8th grade year, then went again the next year in 9th grade. It was over the summer. We went to the city of Lima, city of Pisco, and the city of Chincha, and we led crusades and all that stuff out there. I was a kid. I'd never been out here before. I'd never been out the country before, let alone been on a plane. But there I was out there with the missions team, praying for people, changing people's lives. Half of them didn't know anything I was saying because I was speaking in English, they were speaking in Spanish. But knowing that, it's not about what you say or them understanding every word that you say, but knowing that the Spirit is moving, knowing that God's hand is on it. So at the end of the day, it's not my works, it's not by my power, my might, but by His Spirit. A moment I will never forget, really a person I will never forget, Miss Whitehead, my 10th grade English teacher. 10th grade English, room 2116 at War Hill High School. We're going through the poetry unit, learning about Robert Frost, Shel Silverstein, Edgar Allan Poe, Shakespeare, all the classics. We had to write a villanelle for the class and then get up in front of the class and say it. I was super shy. I did not want to get up in front of everybody because I didn't see my voice as important. So my teacher, she gets up and says, no, don't worry about it. I'll just read the poem in front of everybody. You don't got to worry about it. She reads it. Everybody's like, oh, whoa, that's crazy. Oh, that's crazy. And then after class, she stops me and says, you should write more. You got something here. You should get into this. You should keep going. And I just kept going. And from there, that was the first time I really began to just write, just for writing, outside of school. This was unheard of. I didn't really see it as important then, but I didn't realize it was something that would really begin to redirect the course of my life. Who would have thought, right? So following that, I got a chance to, through that same teacher, I got a chance to be a part of a competition held by the NAACP, the NAACP AXO competition. Over 26 different categories, spans nationally, everything from culinary arts to physics, to mathematics, to humanities, you name it. And all Black kids that looked like me from across the United States. I won on the local level and qualified for the nationals in the categories of poetry and engineering. So I get to nationals and I think I have everything together. I don't win. Actually, I'm pretty sure I got smoked, like badly. I was so down because I was like, I worked so hard for this. I did everything right. Again, patience. Everything is there for a reason. So fast forward again next year, I do the same competition again next year, get my engineering project together. I built a robot for disabled Americans. I built it out of Vex robotics parts, programmed it, everything. Wrote my poem. You had to get the poem notarized to even get it into the competition. Got it notarized, got everything going. Go to the national competition. This year it's in Vegas, right? I'm thinking, oh, I'm big balling. You know what I'm saying? I'm 16 going out west. It was my first time going out there. I didn't win again. I lost again. And I'm just looking at myself like, well, what's the point? Like, what's all this stuff? My bully moment probably came in, I believe it was fall 2018. The church I had grown up in had shut down. That was a blow. That church was home, you know. Us being in Virginia, most of our family and friends and people that our family was connected to were down in Charlotte, North Carolina. So there was always just a little bit of distance. But that church really became the aunties and uncles and, you know, the cousins. When my mom and dad would go on missions trips or be invited out to conferences, they were the ones that was, you know, cooking meals for us and making sure we got to and from football practice and going to track meets and coming to, you know, graduations and really just being there for us. And my dad specifically was a very fiery preacher, you know, always had the energy, you know, that's who he was. Well, in 2015, he suffered a massive stroke. It should have killed him a couple different times. By the grace of God, he's still here. But because of that, he couldn't be as fiery as he was. He didn't have, to this day, he still sometimes struggles to use his left side. So there was things that he was doing for the church. Like, for example, that man would get up and go and work, you know, a full-time job and then go preach on Sundays. He can't do that anymore. So slowly things began to crumble. Slowly things began to fall apart. The church shutting down wasn't just one moment. It was a slow crumbling until everything just kind of fell apart. So when everything shut down, I remember I believe it was October. I was at Liberty University. We were outside. The ministry I was leading, Bridging the Gap, we have like an intake process. The proceedings are going well. My phone starts ringing. I'm like, okay, I see it's my pops. I'm like, all right, this is a little early for him to be calling me, but all right, cool. Pick up the phone and my mom and my dad, they're great actors sometimes, but I can feel the heaviness on his voice. I'm like, hey, pops, what's going on? And he's like, we just had to close everything down. And I knew exactly what he was talking about because the last time I was at the church, we had a Wednesday night Bible study. Only a couple people were there. We used to have a full house just for people to come in and be a part of the community. There was only a few people there, and I was the only one that was there that could run the sound booth. So the membership was already dwindling. Things were already looking interesting, to say the least. So getting that call, it was like a sigh of relief, like, okay, we don't have to struggle anymore, but what does this mean now? When my pops had a stroke, my mom, she originally didn't tell me and my younger brothers what was going on. He was down in Miami for a pastor's conference. Typical business. He was in his hotel room, and at some point, he lost feeling in his left side. He couldn't move. They had to call the front desk to let the EMTs into the room. Eventually, my dad was able to get through to my mom, and I remember seeing her, it's like, hey, I'm going down to Miami. What's going, like, I got to go handle some stuff. I was like, all right, knowing my dad was down there, I'm like, I hope everything's cool. Typical us is like, all right, business as usual, we're going to keep going. She goes down there, and she's down there for almost a month. Like, she's down there at the hospital with my pops for a long time. And originally I'm like, all right, I'm looking at my younger brothers because I'm like, okay, something is definitely wrong because this is out of character. This is weird. But I see them, they call us, they let us know what happened. And at that point I'm like, okay, is he all right? All right, cool. During that month, we had people in the church that was coming by the house that was making sure we got to and from school or football practice. We had some family that happened to be in Virginia. One of my cousins, she came down and she just made sure we was good. There were just people that were just there for us in that moment. And I guess either they didn't know what was going on or they were told not to tell us until my mom and dad were ready to let us know. So I was like, hey, I appreciate them to this day because I was at the time a senior in high school. My older of the younger brothers, he was in middle school and my youngest brother was still in elementary. So like, I didn't have the answers because they were looking to me, and I was like, you know what, let's just keep moving forward because whatever they're dealing with, they got it. God's got them. We gonna keep doing what we're supposed to do. So it was a very weird time. But yeah, one thing, it drew me and my brothers closer together. It drew our family closer together because in one moment we realized how fragile everything really was. I think my biggest regret is that sometimes I wonder what it would be like if I tried something different. You know, if I was more adventurous, if I stepped out on faith a little bit more, if I tried something new. Me personally, I can be a very meticulous, very methodical person. There are many times where my mom and my pops would say, hey, you should try this, you should jump into this program, you should do this thing, or you should just try it. And many times I wouldn't because I didn't see the value in it. I didn't see how it would grow me beyond where I was. Poetry being a prime example of, hey, just one teacher said, hey, you should try it. And now I'm doing all kinds of cool things. Sharing your testimony is one of the most vital things in your life that you can do, because there's somebody out there that will truly benefit from it, possibly have their lives saved because of your courage. Being a part of the Bully Magazine documentary, it makes me feel hopeful. It makes me feel like energized because there's not a lot of platforms that are just genuinely letting people just say, hey, what's your story and why do you do what you do? There's not a lot of places you can go to see that. There's not a lot of people that are really making an effort to make this kind of space and make a safe space for this kind of openness and honesty. It's very much needed, especially in a time where community is such a commodity. So being a part of this Bully Magazine docuseries it's hopeful, it's energizing. One thing I want to do is I want to create the office of Poet Laureate for the city of Williamsburg. The city of Williamsburg has been around for hundreds of years. Some of the greatest or well-known orators of our time, Thomas Jefferson, some of the founding fathers came through that city, and there's never been a voice for what actually is going on in that city. We're in the middle of an arts renaissance in Williamsburg right now, and it needs a voice. I plan on instilling the first ever Poet Laureate there. Another thing for the future, Slam Connection. We're in the process of becoming an official nonprofit. So with that being said, we plan on putting together Slam teams and sending them to Southern Fried starting in 2025. So we'll be moving forward with that, and not just creating a platform for artists to come in and try new things, but creating a platform for more seasoned and veteran artists to come in and test they might. One thing I plan on doing is keeping my LLC going. I run a business called Titan Graphics. I want a chapter of Slam Connection in every school in Williamsburg. Right now, we have a youth circuit that we have going on through War Hill High School. We're currently working on Bruton High School, and myself as the regional team director for the YMCA, we have a program called Writing Storm that uses the Slam Connection curriculum. So typically when I do this piece, I do it with a mic stand. But in the words of a good friend of mine, mic stands stay hating short people. My feet don't even touch the ground on this stool. So this one is for my short kings. For those of us that spread our wings and soar below 6 feet. For those of us you didn't know walked into this room, not just because you're taller than us, but because you forgot that atoms aren't the only small things you can split in half and watch energy spread in every direction. You better try us. Stop playing like we want Hiroshima, yo Nagasaki, like we ain't walking mushroom clouds the size of actual mushrooms. This one's for my short kings, for us 5'0" sand castles, spending our lives trying to draw bridges only to realize that Princess Baby Girl was paying attention to Mr. 6'2" and emotionally unavailable to realize that the walls of this fortress was her safe space the entire time. And no, we may not be the tallest buildings in the skyline of our friend groups, but I promise you, they look up to us too. This is for every one of you jive turkeys that ain't picked me when we was playing basketball, not knowing I be Nate Robinson, Spud Webb, dunking on your 10-foot expectations. This is for every last one of y'all that didn't know that short kings be molecules, size of self-acceptance. Suns burning under the sun, blowing up in a sky we were told we weren't tall enough to reach. But don't think we ain't touched it. This is for every person that didn't know, that saw the top of my head, assumed it was the top of my potential, not realizing there are stars that know my name. I walked up to mountains, told them overgrown rock formations that they part of the ground too. And I stand at the top of one of them jangs any day and scream, yo, this one for my short king, stop playing. Like we ain't walking Coachellas, the greatest concerts you've never heard. Like we ain't mighty mosh pits of muscle and mayhem mashed into tank tops and medium-sized t-shirts, but you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know none of that because y'all was too busy overlooking me to ever understand me.